In this second video, I want to talk about one of the main keys on interpreting the Bible. And one of those keys is historical grammatical context. Let me repeat that again. Historical grammatical context. It's very crucial in interpreting the meaning of the message in the Bible. Now, let me give you an example so you can understand what I'm trying to say. I am from the Dominican Republic. I'm from Santo Domingo. In Dominican Republic, they have a culture. They have a way of saying things. They have customs in there. They have different words of saying things. It's a different language. So that's a different background. That's a different context from the culture of the United States. Okay. Let me give you another example. There in the Dominican Republic, a person that is very slick, that is very smart, that is very, how to say it, very cool, or have wits, and we call that person tigre, which means tiger. So in that culture, we call that kind. That's a slang on the street. That's a language on the street. In a slang, informal. Now, if I come to the United States, it's a different culture. If I tell somebody who is from the culture of the United States, I tell them that person is a tiger. They wouldn't understand what I'm saying. They would take it literally. Do I mean a literal tiger with stripes and with claws? They would take a literal interpretation maybe, because I'm speaking from a different culture or different context, a different background. So it's the same with the Bible. The Bible was written during a different culture, during a different time, different language. It was written in 3 languages: Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic. I don't know how to pronounce that word so good. Anyhow, so that was a culture during those times. A different time, they have their own customs, they have their own words, they have their own ways of saying things. So when you study in the Bible, you can't ignore that. Because if you ignore context, historical context, you will end up with wrong interpretations of the Bible. Let me give you an example. For instance, when it says it is more easy for a man it is hard for a man to enter. It is more easy for a donkey to enter. I can't remember the verse. Anyhow, let me not use that example. But you have to look at the context when you study in the Bible. When it was said. During what times it was said. For instance, was it said during the time of the law of Moses? Or was it said during the time of the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ? Or even still, was it said in the Bible, was it said during the transition from the law of Moses to the kingdom age? What I mean is this. You have to look at the context. For instance, when Jesus came up to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, that's a transition period from law to covenant. If you don't know that, you will misinterpret many verses in the Bible. Many. Because context, historical context cannot be ignored. Cannot be ignored. It's like you watching a movie, right? Or a play, or if you don't know the context, If you don't know the history behind the movie, you will not understand the movie. You will not understand it because you don't know the history, you don't know the context, you don't know under what circumstance, to whom it was said, who was speaking, who said it, why they say it. All that is context. So I notice sometimes persons, they just take a few verses of the Bible, put them together, and they come with an interpretation. And they totally ignore context. They totally ignore what was said before, what was said after. You can't ignore context, my friend. You can't ignore historical context. Because if you ignore historical context, you will interpret the Bible wrong. You will come up with a wrong interpretation of the Bible. Another thing, which is the grammatical context. The Bible was written in Greek, ancient Hebrew, and Aramaic. You must look at Bible dictionaries, you must for the words, because in their times a word may mean something different from what that word means in our times now. Very important. So you must look at that. You must look at customs, you must look at beliefs, you must look at poetry, you must look at symbolism. The Bible uses much symbolism. So my issue is things that were intended to be symbolic were taken literal. My goodness. For instance, the prophets had a prophetic language, poetical, a prophetic language that the prophets of the Old Testament use. And because that has been ignored, there are so many wrong interpretations of the Bible. Because we don't look at the context. For instance, another thing, how our Bibles are arranged doesn't help us. The order in which the books in the Bible are arranged doesn't help us at all. They need to be arranged in chronological order so you can see a line, like you can see a story, because remember, the Bible includes history, the Bible includes poetry, is literature, is, I don't know how to pronounce that word good, literature, it's hard for me to pronounce. So that's the Bible. You must look at context, my friend. It's very important that you look at context, because sometimes people end up with something that is not the meaning. There is only one interpretation, not many interpretations. There's only one interpretation. There's only one, and the entire Bible agrees, but you must look at the history behind it. You must look at the context, the customs, the Jewish culture, the Middle East culture. They have different culture. So if you don't look at those factors, you will not understand what they're saying. You will invent an interpretation, a personal interpretation, out of yourself, which totally contradicts the history, the times when those things were said. You understand what I'm saying? You must look at the history. You must look at the grammar. Yes, there is grammar in the Bible. There is grammar. You must look at the grammar. You must look at the history. You go check out your lexicons. The lexicons are books that includes the meaning of the Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic. You must look at all that. It's because that has been ignored that there are so many wrong interpretations of the Bible. You cannot just take one verse in the Bible and say that verse means that. No, you can't do that. You have to look at what was said before that, what was said after, what was that book about. You must look at the whole Bible to just interpret one piece of the Bible. You must look at the entire Bible to interpret just one piece. But the problem we have, we take one piece, we take 3 pieces, we take 4 pieces, and we come to a conclusion just with 4 pieces of the Bible. It's unbelievable, my brothers and sisters. The confusion that this generation is going through. because historical context is ignored, grammatical context is ignored, is not given due attention. It's a serious issue, my brothers and sisters. It's a serious issue. Also, those who are the translators of the Bible, for instance, I'm going to say it, the translator of the King James Version, I mean, they were under that king that was translating the Bible. So they had to translate according to their traditions. They had to translate the Bible according to the tradition of the king, of the religion of the king. They couldn't translate as they supposed to translate. They knew how to translate, the right way to translate a text, but because they were being paid by King James, whoever, the royalty of those times, they had to translate according to the tradition that they were told. They could not translate the right way. So that's another issue right there with these translators. Translator, you are a traitor. That's a French, I think, a French proverb. Translator, you are a traitor. So we have a serious issue here. Those are our components which have affected so many people. I mean, don't ignore historical background. Don't ignore context. Don't ignore grammatical context. I have seen many people just take one verse and come with an interpretation, and they don't read, they don't look what it said before, they don't look what it said after, they don't look what the whole book is about, they don't look at what the whole Bible is about, they don't look what, they don't, because the Bible is a puzzle. Everything connects, everything agrees, but you must look at context. For instance, there are many things that Jesus said in the Gospels, but he said it under the law of Moses. He said it as a Jew to the Jews. He said it on the law. So you cannot apply that to grace. You cannot apply that to our times, because it was said to a different audience. It was said in a different time, in a different age, different season, during different circumstances. A Jewish rabbi speaking to Jews under the law of Moses. So what was the problem we have today? Sometimes many interpreters of the Bible try to apply that to us, to our times. And there we have a wrong interpretation of what Jesus intended. It's unbelievable, brothers and sisters. It's something that concerns me a lot, that worries me a lot, because I'm a person that I want the truth. I want the truth. I don't want traditions. I don't want traditions. I'm after the truth. I'm after the truth. And we will not get the truth in the Bible if we ignore the background. The background of the books of the Bible. For instance, in the New Testament, there are letters that were written, so they must be studied as letters. And letters have a background. So we cannot ignore the background and interpret the letter as a book. A letter must be interpreted as a letter. That's another serious issue right there. That's another serious issue. A letter is interpreted as a book, and the background of that letter is ignored. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, brothers and sisters. That's why we have a chaotic, it's a chaos what we have in this generation. But may the Lord help us. May the Lord teach us. May the Lord grant us grace and mercy, that we may understand the central message of the Bible.